Distress among the stars. The vast emptiness of uncharted space stretched before Scout Neri Ixal as she stared at the flashing red indicators on her control panel. Her small Telvari scout vessel shuddered violently before all systems fell silent. The sudden quiet was more terrifying than the alarms had been. She was stranded, drifting helplessly through a region no Telvari had mapped before, with primary engines dead and auxiliary power failing. Neri moved her six-fingered hands across the control surfaces with practiced precision, but nothing responded. The strange radiation field emanating from the nearby nebula had affected her ship in ways their scientists hadn't predicted. Her sensors had failed to detect the unusual energy pattern until it was too late. Scout Vessel Key 17, Emergency Log Update. She spoke calmly to the recorder. Day 1 of critical system failure. Main engines non-responsive. Auxiliary power maintaining life support and minimal functions only. Communication array damaged beyond repair. Neri's large silver eyes, adapted for low-light environments, blinked slowly as she calculated her situation. The Telvari were nothing if not practical. Her people valued efficiency and logical thought above all. She knew they would not waste valuable resources searching for a single scout vessel. This was not cruelty, merely pragmatism. The needs of many outweighed the needs of one. This was accepted. This was the way. Remaining oxygen will sustain life for approximately 16 standard cycles. She continued, her voice steady despite the death sentence she was pronouncing upon herself. As per protocol, I will maintain observation of the anomaly until resources are depleted. The dim emergency lighting cast blue shadows across her pale blue skin. The scout quarters were minimal, designed for function rather than comfort. A sleeping platform, nutrition dispenser, and the control console occupied the small space. Telvari scouts did not require comfort for their missions, only efficiency. Neri felt no fear. Fear was inefficient. She understood her place in the greater structure of the Telvari concordance. Individual lives were valuable only as they served the collective. A scout lost in uncharted space was a regrettable but acceptable resource reduction. She turned to her observation equipment. If death was inevitable, she would at least gather data until the end. Perhaps her ship's black box would someday be recovered, and her observations would benefit future explorers. The nebula swirled outside her viewport, beautiful and deadly. Purple and green gases formed patterns unlike any she had documented before. The nebula appears to contain unique energy signatures, she recorded. These energies interfere with ship systems in ways our scientists have not predicted. This information would be valuable to future scouts who would likely never receive her warning. For 5 cycles, Neri maintained her logs. She slept only when necessary, consumed minimal rations, and observed the nebula. She documented everything meticulously. This was her duty. On the 6th cycle, as she was recording observations about a particularly dense section of the nebula, her thoughts unexpectedly drifted to home. This was unusual. Telvari rarely indulged in nostalgia. It served no practical purpose. Yet she found herself remembering the crystalline towers of her birth city and the ordered patterns of ships moving through Telvari space. Personal log addition, she said, surprising herself. Scouts rarely made personal entries. I find myself contemplating the educational clusters where young Telvari learned their duties. I recall the efficiency of our training protocols. I was designated for scout duty due to my enhanced observational capabilities and tolerance for isolation. She paused, then added quietly, I have served effectively. My data has expanded the Concordance's knowledge of 8 previously uncharted sectors. This is adequate accomplishment for one lifetime. By the 10th cycle, Neri had exhausted all possible observations with her damaged equipment. Her nutrition supplies were calculated to last the full 16 cycles, but with nothing productive to accomplish, she reduced her intake further. Resources should not be wasted, even when the only benefit would be a slightly prolonged death. Cycle 10, she recorded. I have completed all possible observations. Remaining power has been diverted to life support. I will enter low energy state to preserve oxygen. The low energy state was similar to hibernation. Telvari could slow their bodily functions when resources were scarce. Neri settled onto her sleeping platform, slowed her breathing, and prepared for the long wait until the end. On the 12th cycle, a soft beeping pulled her from her low energy state. One of the few functioning sensors had detected something. Neri moved to the console, her movements stiff after 2 cycles of minimal motion. The sensor showed an approaching object. A ship. That was not possible. No Telvari vessels would be in this uncharted region. Unknown contact detected. She recorded, professionalism returning instantly. Size indicates a vessel larger than Scout class. Configuration unknown. Not Telvari design. Neri felt something unfamiliar stir within her. Not hope. Hope was inefficient. Perhaps curiosity. If this was another spacefaring species, her last act could be first contact. That would be a significant contribution to the concordance. She diverted power from life support to the sensor array, sacrificing days of oxygen for better data. The approaching ship was unlike anything in Telvari records. Its design seemed almost haphazard to her eyes, with odd protrusions and asymmetrical features. Inefficient design, yet it moved with purpose. The vessel appears to have altered course, she noted with surprise. It is now moving directly toward this position. Perhaps they had detected her ship and were coming to salvage it. Many species would take advantage of Telvari technology. She should prevent this if possible. But as the ship grew closer, something even more unexpected happened. Her communication system, which had been completely dead, suddenly activated with a crackle of static. A voice came through. The language was unknown to her, but the tone seemed concerned. That made no sense. The universal translator in her ship struggled with the unfamiliar language. After several repetitions, partial translation began. Repeat, this is the UES Horizon's Hope. We have detected your vessel and signs of distress. Do you require assistance? Please respond if able. Assistance. Neri blinked rapidly, her species version of confusion. Why would an unknown species offer assistance to a stranded Telvari? There was no benefit to them. It was an inefficient use of their resources. Yet the message continued, now clearer as the translator adjusted. We are prepared to render aid. Please respond with your status and any immediate needs. With hesitant movements, Neri activated her response system. This is Scout Neri Exal of the Telvari Concordance. My vessel is damaged beyond repair. Life support failing. 4 cycles remaining. There was a pause, then the response came quickly. Understood, Scout Neri Exal. We are approaching your position. We will reach you in approximately 3 hours. Please conserve your resources. We are coming to help. Neri stared at the communication panel. This response defied all logic. These strangers were diverting their ship and resources to rescue a single unknown alien. As the strange ship grew closer on her sensors, Neri recorded one final note before their arrival. Unknown species approaching. They claim intent to rescue this scout. Behavior is illogical. Will observe and report. She hesitated, then added, Perhaps there are things the Concordance does not yet understand about other ways of existing among the stars. For the first time in her life, Neri felt something that might, inefficiently, be called hope. The UES Horizon's hope grew larger in Neri's viewport. The ship was unlike any she had ever seen. Its design seemed strange to her Telvari eyes. Curves where there should be angles, sections that appeared decorative rather than functional. Inefficient, her training told her. Yet the vessel moved with surprising grace through the nebulous swirling gases. Neri watched as the ship positioned itself alongside her small scout vessel. She recorded everything, noting the blue and white markings on the hull. Strange symbols she couldn't read decorated the side, along with the words UES Horizons Hope in large letters. Scout Neri Xal. This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the UES Horizons Hope. We're preparing to establish a docking connection with your vessel. Please stand by. The voice was calm and assured. Neri noted that their translator was adapting quickly to her language. These beings had impressive technology. I do not understand, Neri replied. Why do you assist me? We have never met. There is no advantage to you. There was a brief pause before the response came. Because you need help, Captain Rodriguez said simply, as if that explained everything. We don't leave anyone stranded in space if we can help it. It doesn't matter what species you are. This concept was so foreign to Neri that she struggled to process it. In Telvari culture, all actions were calculated for maximum efficiency and benefit to the concordance. Rescuing a single scout, especially one from another species, would never be considered a worthwhile use of resources. A gentle shudder ran through her ship as the Horizons Hope extended a docking tube. Neri gathered her data records and prepared to meet these strange beings. If she survived this encounter, the information would be valuable to the concordance. Stand clear of your airlock, a new voice instructed. We're cutting through. Your door mechanism appears damaged. Minutes later, there was a hiss as the seal was breached. Neri stood tall, her pale blue skin shimmering under the emergency lights. Her six-fingered hands were empty, showing she was unarmed. The airlock door slid open. 3 figures stood there, wearing simple uniforms. Neri observed them carefully. They were bipedal, but with rounded features and varied coloring. 2 had dark fur on their heads, while 1 had lighter fur. Their skin tones ranged from pale to brown. Hello, said the one in front, a female by Neri's assessment. I'm Captain Elena Rodriguez. This is our medical officer, Dr. Marcus Chen, and our engineer, Zoe Conquo. Neri inclined her head slightly, the formal greeting of her people. I am Scout Neri Exal of the 7th Exploration Division, Telvari Concordance. The 3 humans looked at her with expressions she couldn't interpret. Were they assessing her value, calculating her worth? But their next actions confused her further. Are you injured? Asked the one called Marcus, stepping forward with a small device. I'm a doctor. I'd like to check if you need medical attention. My physical condition is adequate, Neri replied. My ship's resources were calculated to maintain my life for 4 more cycles. Your intervention was unnecessary, though I will record it as significant cultural data. The humans exchanged glances. Unnecessary, Captain Rodriguez repeated. You would have died out here. Yes, that is the expected outcome when a scout vessel fails in uncharted territory. It is inefficient to risk multiple lives and resources to save one. Zoe, the engineer, stepped forward. That's not how we see things. We believe every life has value, worth saving. Neri tilted her head. Interesting philosophy. Impractical, but interesting. Let's get you aboard our ship, Captain Rodriguez said. Your vessel's life support is failing, and this nebula has strange properties we don't fully understand yet. Our science team is very excited to talk with you about your observations. As they guided her through the docking tube to their ship, Neri continued to observe everything. The interior of the Horizons Hope was spacious by Telvari standards. The corridors were well lit, with displays showing ship systems and what appeared to be decorative images, another inefficiency. They brought her to what they called their medical bay, a large room filled with beds and equipment. Dr. Chen asked her to sit on one of the beds while he ran scans. Your physiology is fascinating, he said, looking at the readings. Oxygen-based respiration similar to ours, but your cellular structure is quite different. Are you comfortable with our atmosphere? It contains sufficient oxygen, Neri confirmed, though the humidity is higher than Telvari standard. We can adjust the environmental controls in the guest quarters we're preparing for you, Captain Rodriguez offered. Guest quarters. Neri had expected to be placed in a secure holding area, while they determined what to do with her. These humans continued to behave in unpredictable ways. A new human entered the medical bay, moving quickly, This one had darker skin and wore a different uniform. "Captain, we've completed the initial assessment of the alien vessel," the newcomer said, then noticed Neri. "Oh, hello there. I'm Chief Engineer Zoe Okonkwo. Your ship took quite a beating from that nebula. Can it be repaired?" Captain Rodriguez asked. Engineer Okonkwo shook her head. "The main power system is completely fried. The nebula's energy field overloaded it. We could salvage some parts, but the ship itself will never fly again. At least not without a complete overhaul." Neri accepted this news without reaction. She had already calculated this outcome. The vessel is not important. The data I collected is what matters. "Speaking of data," said another voice as a new human entered the room. This one was male, tall and thin, with excitement evident in his movements. "I'm Dr. James Kimethi, Chief Science Officer. I'd love to discuss your observations of the nebula. We've been studying it from a distance, but your readings from inside the phenomenon would be invaluable." Neri tilted her head. These humans wanted to exchange knowledge. Perhaps there was logic to their actions after all. As the humans continued to speak around her, discussing accommodations, technical details, and plans, Neri observed their interactions carefully. They operated with a strange mixture of efficiency and what appeared to be genuine concern for each other, and surprisingly, for her as well. This was a cultural study unlike any the Concordants had ever documented. Whatever happened next, Neri Xal knew her mission had suddenly become far more significant than a simple mapping expedition. The value of a single life. Captain Rodriguez led Neri through the corridors of the Horizon's Hope. The human vessel was larger than Neri had initially calculated, with sections dedicated to functions that would never exist on a Telveri ship, recreation areas, gardens growing non-essential plants, and communal dining spaces. "These are your quarters," Rodriguez said, gesturing to a door that slid open at their approach. "We've adjusted the environmental controls to match what Dr. Chen thinks will be comfortable for your physiology, but please let us know if you need any changes." Neri stepped into the room. It contained a sleeping platform, a desk with a computer terminal, a private hygiene facility, and a view screen currently displaying stars. The space was several times larger than her scout ship's quarters. "This allocation of space for a single individual is inefficient," she observed. Rodriguez's lips curved upward. A smile. Neri had learned this was called. "We believe comfortable crew members are more effective crew members. Plus, everyone deserves their own space." Deserves. Neri tilted her head. The concept was unfamiliar. "It's a human thing, I guess," Rodriguez replied. "We believe certain considerations are due to all sapient beings simply because they exist, not because they've earned them or because they're useful." Before Neri could process this strange philosophy, the captain continued, "There's a basic guide to our ship systems on the computer, and you can call for assistance at any time. Would you like to rest, or would you prefer to meet with our science team to discuss your data?" "The data is of primary importance," Neri stated. "Rest can be deferred." Rodriguez nodded. "I'll have Dr. Kimethi meet you in Science Lab 2. It's just down the corridor. The computer can guide you. I need to return to the bridge, but we'll speak again soon." Left alone, Neri took a moment to examine the quarters more thoroughly. The sleeping platform was soft, unnecessarily so. The environmental controls were precise. The computer interface was intuitive, despite being designed for humans. These people valued both function and something else: comfort, aesthetics. 20 minutes later, Neri sat across from Dr. Kimethi and two other science officers as they reviewed her observational data. Their excitement was evident in their rapid speech and animated gestures. "This is extraordinary," Kimethi said, studying her readings. "The nebula contains a previously undocumented form of energy. It's no wonder your ship's systems failed. They weren't designed to handle this. The Telveri Concordants will value this information," Neri stated. "When will you return me to my people?" The scientists exchanged glances. We're currently mapping a course to Telveri space, one of them explained. But it's quite distant from our usual territory. It may take several weeks. Neri processed this. You will divert your vessel for weeks to return a single scout. What is your expected compensation? Dr. Kimethi looked puzzled. Compensation? We don't need payment for helping you get home. Then why expend the resources? It is inefficient. Because it's the right thing to do, Kimethi said simply. And besides, the opportunity to make first contact with your species and learn from each other is valuable in itself. Knowledge exchange. Neri nodded. This has logic. Over the next 3 days, Neri was introduced to more of the ship's crew. Each interaction revealed new aspects of human behavior that challenged her Telveri understanding. They worked together efficiently, but with a strange undercurrent of what they called camaraderie. They joked during tasks. They inquired about each other's well-being without apparent purpose. They voluntarily spent off-duty time together. Most perplexing was their continuous concern for her comfort and integration. They invited her to their mess hall, offered to modify food for her physiology, asked about her preferences, and seemed genuinely interested in her experiences. On the 4th day, Neri was sharing a meal with Dr. Chen when she finally asked the question that had been forming in her mind. Your society appears to operate on principles that contradict efficiency. You allocate resources to individual comfort that could be used elsewhere. You diverted your ship to rescue one unknown alien with no guarantee of reciprocal benefit. How does your species advance with such inefficient allocation of resources? Chen considered this thoughtfully. We don't see it as inefficient. We believe that treating individuals well ultimately benefits our society as a whole. When people feel valued, they contribute more creatively and willingly. But the mathematical calculation. Not everything valuable can be calculated, Chen interrupted gently. Compassion, curiosity, individual potential. These things resist quantification, but drive our greatest achievements. Before Neri could respond, the ship's alarm system activated. Red lights flashed, and Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system. All hands to emergency stations. We've encountered an unexpected spatial anomaly. Securing all sections. Brace for turbulence. The ship shuddered violently. Neri and Chen grabbed the table to steady themselves as the gravity briefly fluctuated. We need to get to a secure area, Chen said, standing quickly. Come with me. They made their way through corridors filled with crew members moving purposefully to their stations. No one showed panic, only determined focus. Another violent tremor shook the ship, more severe than the first. Neri lost her footing and would have fallen if Chen hadn't caught her arm. The nebula's energy patterns, she realized aloud. They're expanding. My readings indicated this possibility, but not at this magnitude. They reached the bridge, where Captain Rodriguez was receiving reports from various stations. View screens showed the nebula, now pulsing with intense energy patterns, far more active than when Neri had observed it. Captain, Neri said as they entered, I have data relevant to this phenomenon. Rodriguez glanced up. Dr. Chen, why did you bring her to the bridge during an emergency? She insisted her data could help, Chen replied. The energy patterns follow a predictable sequence, Neri explained quickly. My ship was damaged because we did not recognize the pattern in time, but I documented the full cycle before systems failed. Rodriguez nodded sharply. Work with Kimethi. If you can help us navigate this safely, I'd be grateful. For the next hours, Neri worked alongside the science team, integrating her observations with their sensor readings. The humans moved with urgency but without the rigid efficiency Telveri would demand. They questioned, suggested, adjusted. A collaborative process that seemed chaotic but produced rapid results. The next energy pulse will come from that sector, Neri indicated on their display. If you adjust your shield harmonics to this frequency, you can minimize disruption. Engineer Okonkwo implemented the changes immediately. When the next pulse hit, the ship shuddered but remained stable. It worked, Kimethi exclaimed. but we're still taking cumulative damage. We need to exit this region. The pattern creates a temporary corridor of stability, Neri explained, pointing to her calculations. Here, but it will only exist for approximately 7 minutes after the next pulse. Captain Rodriguez studied the data. That's our way out. Helm, prepare to move on my mark. Engineering, divert all available power to engines when I give the signal. The bridge crew worked with practiced coordination. Neri observed their efficiency, different from Telvari efficiency, but effective nonetheless. They trusted each other's judgments, built upon suggestions, and supported decisions without the hierarchical rigidity of her people. When the next energy pulse subsided, Rodriguez gave the command. The horizon's hope surged forward, engines straining as they pushed through the nebula's swirling gases. For terrifying moments, the ship bucked and shuddered under the stress. Warning indicators flashed across control panels. Then suddenly, they were clear, the nebula behind them, normal space ahead. A cheer erupted from the crew. People clasped each other's shoulders, exchanged smiles, expressed relief in dozens of small ways. Captain Rodriguez took a deep breath, then turned to Neri. Thank you. Your data saved my ship and crew. Neri tilted her head. I provided information. You implemented the solution. Teamwork, Rodriguez said with a smile. Something I think both our species understand, though perhaps in different ways. In the days that followed, as the ship continued its journey toward Telvari space, Neri found herself involved in increasingly frequent interactions with the crew. They sought her expertise on astronomical phenomena. They invited her to their recreational activities. They asked about Telvari culture with genuine curiosity. And slowly, Neri began to ask questions of her own. She learned about Earth, a single planet that had produced this diverse, adaptable species. She learned about their history, sometimes violent, often struggling, but persistently striving toward something they called progress that encompassed more than technological advancement. She learned about human concepts that had no direct equivalent in Telvari language. Compassion, empathy, friendship, words that described inefficient but apparently powerful motivational forces. 2 weeks into the journey, Captain Rodriguez found Neri in the ship's observation lounge, staring at the stars. Thinking about home, the captain asked, joining her. Contemplating differences, Neri replied. Your species devotes significant resources to individual well-being. The Telvari would consider this wasteful, yet you advance to interstellar capability, as we did. Rodriguez considered this. Different paths to the same destination. But which path is better? Neri asked, surprising herself with the question. A proper Telvari would never question the Concordance's approach. I can't answer that, Rodriguez said. But I know that when we rescued you, not one of my crew questioned whether it was worth the diversion. Not because it was protocol, but because saving one life, any life, matters to us, even an alien life. Especially then, making contact with new species, learning from each other, that's how we grow. Neri was silent for a long moment. The Concordance values knowledge exchange as well, but they would not have diverted resources to save one human scout. Perhaps after our peoples get to know each other better, that might change, Rodriguez suggested. Perhaps, Neri agreed, though uncertainty filled her. The idea troubled her in ways she couldn't articulate, ways that would have been dismissed as inefficient on a Telvari vessel. As they approached Telvari space, Neri found herself experiencing an unexpected reluctance. The more she learned about humans, the more she recognized the limitations of her own culture's rigid adherence to efficiency above all else. The day before they were scheduled to reach the border outpost, Neri requested a meeting with Captain Rodriguez. I have decided, she said without preamble when they were alone, that I wish to propose a formal cultural exchange program between our species. Rodriguez looked surprised but pleased. That would be wonderful. A longer-term diplomatic mission. Yes, I will recommend that I remain as liaison to study human society further. Your approach to resource allocation and social organization merits deeper analysis. What Neri didn't say, couldn't yet fully articulate even to herself, was that she had begun to see value in the human way, that their inefficiency produced something her people had never considered worth measuring: happiness, connection, meaning beyond function. When they arrived at the Telveri outpost the next day, the Concordance officials were initially suspicious. No non-Telveri ship had ever entered their space before, but Neri's presence and her formal introduction of the humans as a spacefaring species worthy of diplomatic relations eased the tension. As arrangements were made for preliminary discussions between representatives, Neri found a moment alone with Captain Rodriguez. "My official report will state that your rescue of my vessel was logical because it facilitated first contact between our species," Neri said. "This is acceptable within Concordance parameters." Rodriguez's lips curved in that now familiar smile. "But that's not why we did it." "No," Neri agreed. "You did it because you believe every life has intrinsic value, a concept the Concordance does not recognize." "Will you tell them that?" Neri considered this. "Not yet. Such concepts must be introduced gradually. But in my role as cultural liaison, I will have opportunities to demonstrate the potential benefits of your approach. One small step at a time." Rodriguez nodded. "One life at a time," Neri corrected. "That is what I have learned from humans. Sometimes the value of a single life cannot be calculated, but it may change everything." As they walked together toward the meeting where two civilizations would begin their official relationship, Neri understood that her rescue, an act that her people would have considered inefficient and illogical, had created possibilities no Telveri would have predicted. Perhaps efficiency was not the only path to the stars. Perhaps there was something to be said for the human way after all. And perhaps one day, a human scout lost in Telveri space would be rescued not because it was efficient, but because it was right.